Muy buenas a todos, ¿qué tal estáis? Soy Tirso, de Fútbol vs Match. Bienvenido a vuestro canal de apuestas. Muy buenas de nuevo, ¿qué tal? Estamos de vuelta. Antes que nada, quería dar las gracias a esos más de 40 seguidores que tenemos en YouTube y esas más de 400 y algo visitas que hemos tenido en menos de una semana. Gracias de nuevo. Y a todos aquellos que os acabáis de unir, bienvenidos. Hoy hemos tenido un invitado, en nuestro canal y de ahí va a ir este episodio. Lo que hemos hecho es que hablando de Fantasy Premier League hemos invitado a un compañero y amigo de la anterior empresa en la que trabajamos, Martin y yo. Su nombre es Rob Courtney. Y bueno, pues sobre todo le hemos estado preguntando qué es lo que le incentiva o por qué se introdujo en el mundo de Fantasy Premier League, cuáles son los compradores que normalmente él compra, cuál vende, por qué. Pero bueno, en lugar de dar más detalles sobre esto, os dejo con el vídeo, ¿vale?
So here we are, back at I guess the second kind of episode of Football versus Maths, the fantasy football version, but the very first time we actually have a guest here, Rob Courtney. Welcome, Rob. For I guess the people who are watching this now and don't know, this is the second time we're recording this video because yesterday we did it without the audio. We had some trouble, so yeah, take two. Good to have you on board, Rob.
Yeah, amigos, it's a pleasure to be here again. As I said, I'm absolutely honoured to be the first guest for Football versus Maths, the fantasy edition. As you can see, I'm coming live from Anfield on the day that Liverpool have actually just signed Thiago. So the next time you have me back on the podcast, I can guarantee you he will be my pick. But for today, we have someone else.
Nice. Yeah, maybe just give a bit of background. Tirsa, Rob and I used to work together, so it's we know each other quite well. And as Tirsa said the last time, I think we used to play football together, and now it's a bit digital. But yeah, good. Tirsa, do you want to kind of kick it off with maybe a first question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was able to say thank you, Rob, for it's great having you here. As Martin was saying, I think it's been more than 2 years working together, playing football together. You and I going to the pool in our lunchtime. So it's great having our first fantasy coach today, and it's you. So and actually going through the fantasy, can you just tell us more about how you went through this? So this why did you choose fantasy?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I suppose first things first, I have to park my Liverpool biases. It was always one thing that used to hinder me playing fantasy, always trying to squeeze as many Liverpool players in as possible and never picking any United players. So for the sake of your team, I've parked that today. So the main kind of areas that I looked at when I was picking my player was three core factors, I suppose. So number one was the value, like who was the player out there after a bit of research who I thought is going to increase in value over the next few weeks, who we can get on the cheap now to kind of get you as many points as possible. And then the second piece, which kind of comes from that, is like the form. So it's difficult to judge after only 1 week in the Premier League, but form is a factor and who is going to get off to a hot start and probably skyrocket in value. And then the third factor was the sort of average fixture difficulty over the next 5 games from the players I narrowed it down to. Mm-hmm. So, I've looked through the scouting reports to see, who looks good, who can I actually afford, and then who do I want to sell from the team and why. So unfortunately, we can't get Salah into this week's team, but maybe next time.
We do it.
Good. Do you want to, what I can do maybe is to share my screen with you, Rob, and then you can kind of talk us through what players you were looking at removing and who you're looking at getting into the team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I suppose the first port of call, a good place to always look, that's gotten a lot better, is I suppose the scouting reports on the fantasy website. So this was an area that I went into to kind of look at some game week 2 tips and just see kind of, like who was the most transferred in or like who was the top pick this week for captain, et cetera, et cetera. It's always a good place to start. And it was always hard to look past Aubameyang, I suppose, for first week's pick. So this is always kind of the first good port of call to get an indication of what's going on. And then the first person I suppose that popped up for me was Aubameyang, being the top pick for fantasy captain this week. But unfortunately, at 12 million, we obviously can't get him into our team. The second player who I was looking at here, not on this list, but was Bruno Fernandes. He was one of the top targets this week for the game week with like 300,000 plus transfers in. He got an average of 8.4 points per match last season. So he was a player I really wanted to get in, but at 10.5 million, we couldn't afford him. Next up here, as you can see, Willian, who we do have in our team. So I'll be keeping him there this week. Raheem Sterling, another top target for most players. Unfortunately, at 11.5 million, we couldn't quite afford him. And another player who I fancied was Timo Werner, but unfortunately, he has a dead leg and he's just out of our price zone. So the three kind of players that I narrowed it down to from this was Lucas Digne from Everton, Callum Wilson from Newcastle, and Lacazette from Arsenal. And the fourth person I looked at outside of these was Patrick Bamford from Leeds.
All right. So what I'll do is I'm just going to jump over to the actual fantasy team just to give people kind of an idea of what the team was.
By the way, thank you, Rob, for the introduction. I think questions we're gonna be asking you, such as like, who are you gonna choose, why, and if you're gonna sell them, why. So if you can tell us more about that as well, that'll be great.
Perfect. So I suppose trying to choose who to remove is always a difficult option. So I narrowed it down to three players: one defender, one midfielder, one attacker. Yerry Mina for Everton was the guy I picked out of at centre back for Everton. I thought maybe we could try and get more attacking defender in your team who's probably going to get you a few more points. The second person who I thought I might sell in midfield was Mahrez. He had been in isolation due to coronavirus, but reading from the reports this week, he's actually back in training. So he'd be tipped to start, and obviously he's a key player for City. And the third player who I looked at actually was another City player, was Jesus. But with an average of about, I think he had 14 goals last season. So it's kind of hard to remove him from a team because he's a proven goal scorer and he's going to pick you up points. So I suppose that kind of, from there, I was moving into, okay, who are the four players and I want to get in? So I was evaluating those four players I picked, and then I kind of would take it from there. So the first person who I looked at was Callum Wilson for Newcastle.
Have a quick look here. Give me a second there, just over to transfers. There he is. So Callum Wilson obviously was tipped in one of the scouting reports, and when looking into it further, you can see why. So as a striker at only 6.5 million, he's a pretty good bargain, and he started well last week with the first goal in their 2-0 win away, getting a total of 8 points in game week 1. And no player in Newcastle bettered his 4 shots against the Hammers, and he even created 2 chances, which was joint top with Harry Kane in the league. He's the third most bought forward this game week. He got a total of 200,000 transfers for his home match against Brighton. And I thought an interesting stat on top of this was he actually scored 3 goals and 2 assists in his 5 encounters with Brighton while playing for Bournemouth. So definitely a player who's on form, and he's proven probably going to do the business for Newcastle this week. But when I had a look at the next sort of 5 fixtures, some difficult ones, away to Spurs and at home to United. So over the next 5 games, I think his average fixture difficulty was about 3.2. So that was what deterred me from picking Callum Wilson. So the next player I looked to evaluate was Patrick Bamford. So Bamford, he had a great game against Liverpool last week, of all people. He scored a goal and he looked really promising. And Leeds are probably likely to ride the wave of promotion for the next couple of weeks. And at only 5.6 million, he's an absolute steal. He's probably still going to start for the next few weeks or maybe even months while Rodrigo, their new signing, still beds in. So the value for money here is huge. However, again, if you go to their fixtures for the next 5 games,
they've got some tough games coming up. Sheffield United away, Man City at home. So at an average fixture difficulty of about 3, it deterred me from picking Bamford as opposed to the person who I have chosen in my squad this week. So that moved it on to option number 3, which was Lacazette for Arsenal, which was surprising to me when I looked into the stats. Like, he's only in 4.7% of people's squads for a home match against West Ham. Like, he scored a goal last week, the opener at Craven Cottage, and I thought an interesting statistic that popped up was he scored 28 of his 37 Premier League goals in home matches, so highly likely to have a good performance this week. But again, if you go into the next 5 fixtures, some very difficult games. Like, I mean, they're obviously coming up against the champs, Liverpool at home, so that's going to be tough for them. But they've also got City away. So I think their average fixture difficulty was about 3.6. Okay. Again, that was the reason I didn't choose Lacazette. All
right. So who did you go for in the end?
So the person who I did pick was Lucas Digne, the Everton left back. And this is why I decided to replace Yerry Mina at centre back.
1 second there.
I think so. Digne.
Yeah. Yep.
So Lucas Digne, his free kick last week gave the assist for Lewin in their 1-0 victory against Spurs. So the Frenchman also contributed to a clean sheet, similar to Yerry Mina, who he had in centre back. So it meant he actually picked up the maximum or bonus and got a total of 12 points. So when I kind of evaluated these 4 players and I looked at the straight swap between Yerry Mina at centre back versus Digne at left back, who's more than likely probably going to get more assists if he's taking free kicks, I thought it was a no-brainer to swap a centre back for a left back for only an extra 0.5. So I think it's promising for Everton under Ancelotti, and if you look at their next 5 fixtures, they have some pretty reasonable games. Like, they had by far the lowest average fixture difficulty of only 2.4 over the next 4 games or 5 games, including obviously Liverpool at home, that's being their most difficult. So my pick for this week at a total of 6 million, so using the 0.5 that you had in the bank, is Lucas Digne. Perfect.
All right, so I actually made this change yesterday already when we previously recorded, so this is just log into the other team, the actual team now with your change. Looks like this, right? So we have him here, Digne in the back row. Fantastic, Rob. Thanks a million for that. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions that we need to ask you right now, but otherwise I can let you know that we're probably going to disappoint you with our prediction for the Liverpool match this weekend. But you'll find out about that later.
Oh, fair enough. All right, lads. Well, that'll be one bet you'll be getting wrong anyway.
All right. Here, so I don't know if you have any other questions for Rob. Otherwise, I would like to thank you anyway for this week, Rob, and let's see how you get on.
Thanks, lads. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers, Rob.
Thank you for being with us, and hopefully it's not going to be the last one. We can invite you to order more episodes to our channel.
I'm absolutely looking forward to coming back.
All right, cheers, Rob.
Thank you. Take care. Happy Friday.
All right, cheers. See you. Bye.
Happy Friday.
Bye. Bueno, espero que hayáis disfrutado de la charla con Rob. Me quedo con lo que él ha dicho, Martial como el capitán y William como el vicecapitán. Así que nada, la semana que viene lo haremos de nuevo sobre la Fantasy y veremos a ver quién nos traemos de invitado, ¿de acuerdo? Gracias como siempre, no olvidéis de suscribiros a nuestro canal y darle un like. Hasta luego.